Sound Speeds, and welcome to the Sound Speeds podcast. Now, as promised, I do have a couple of announcements. The first one is that the Sound Speeds podcast is now officially part of the Geeks Rising Podcast Network. If you are not familiar with the Geeks Rising Podcast Network, I promise I can say it, then go to geeksrising.com and you can learn all about the network of podcasts that are there. Everything from the Banjo Says podcast to Sunshine and Power Cuts and more and more and more are on there, including this one, which is as far as I know, the only video-only podcast that's up there. The rest of them have audio and video, or at least just audio. But the second announcement I'm going to make is that the Sound Speeds podcast will continue forward at least until the 10-year anniversary mark of the channel, which is the unofficial end date for the regular content that I'm going to be doing on this channel. I'm toying around with. Nothing official just yet. But regardless, I'm going to waste no more time and get right into our content. For our first topic, I'm going to address something that I've been asked many times since I started this channel and was recently that I responded to actually through the Banjo Says podcast. If you haven't checked it out right there. It was longer than it should have been, but hey, Banjo put it in the podcast, so I am very grateful of that. But I'm going to discuss the same kind of thing in this podcast for the people that don't follow that podcast, even though you should. That is, lavalier microphones, why are they omnidirectional? Well, plain and simple. You may look at it and say, an omnidirectional pattern microphone, that's not going to really pick up that well, is it? Well, lavaliers are designed to pick up maybe size of a soccer ball, a big soccer ball, maybe a beach ball, something like that. And they do their job just fine. And you may say, well, why not a cardioid? Why not a super cardioid? Why does it have to be omnidirectional? Well, think about a lavalier microphone. It's supposed to be omnidirectional, picking up evenly around all sides. And it does from a frequency response perspective. But from a detail perspective, it's not. If you point a lavalier microphone directly at your mouth and then rotate it around with the capsule point in the exact same place, you're going to notice that the lavalier itself is going to lose detail as soon as it goes off axis. And that means basically when you are no longer able to see down the barrel of the lav mic. Why is that exactly? Omnidirectionals are supposed to be omnidirectional. Well, the only thing that they promise in an omnidirectional pattern microphone is an even pickup, being able to pick up in all directions. They never once promise that it's going to be the area of greatest detail, do they? No. And this is one of the reasons why if you put a lavalier microphone pointed downwards on your chest and then you walk, doing a walk and talk or something like that, and you're in the rain and you're doing that intentionally to try to keep the rain out of the capsule, you'll run into a muffled type sound. And people will say, well, that's because the lav got wet. No, it's because you're pointing it away and off axis to the mouth most of the time. If you're able to hear something and it's not this completely muffled that sounds like it's underwater sound, then it's because the lavalier is off axis. If you are pointing it downwards and it sounds like it's muffled because it's underwater, that's a different sound altogether. And that is because it got wet and it's blocking the pickup pattern. But you can kind of logically see this. Now, we're going to continue the logic and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here. If a lavalier microphone were omnidirectional pattern were compared to a cardioid pattern, what would you gain and what would you lose? Well, if you were to plant it, let's say right over someone's head in a car, if you were to plant a cardioid next to an Omni, what would be the difference? Well, if you're too close to a cardioid pattern, it's going to do what? What does a cardioid pattern microphone do? If you're talking into the diaphragm of a condenser or a dynamic microphone, what does it sound like if you get really close up on it? Proximity effect increases, right? That's because basically you're taking all of this pattern right here and you're saying, no, the only important part is what's in front. So just this area here in the front. So you're basically essentially dropping the volume of all the other areas, saying that's not important, concentrate on that. But if you have an area where the pattern is focused in here and you're coming in from one direction to it, then basically the entire pattern has been reduced to this one area where it's greater sensitivity of pickup. That's the cardioid pattern, right? It has to have a name. So we give it the name of the pattern it most closely emulates, which is going to be, for our example here, a cardioid. But if you are on axis to the cardioid pattern, you're going to have an increased level. You're going to have an increased, basically you're telling the microphone, focus in on this direction. And if the mouth is right there, you're basically signal to noise ratio is putting it as loud as possible. So it is increasing in volume what is right down the barrel. If you go off axis, you're going to be, as part of everything else that's off axis to it, telling the microphone pattern that you're in the null area, which is not that important. But what about an Omni pattern? In an Omni pattern, if you basically point the microphone and you have it floating in the air, then everything is on axis to it, even if it's not as great a detail. Everything that's on axis to that microphone is going to be picking up evenly, right? That's an Omni pattern microphone. If you point it at your mouth, it'll get more detail, as we said. But what you are losing, and this is the same as across the board on Omni pattern microphones, you don't have proximity effect. Why is that? Because a pattern that is picking up in every single direction doesn't just pick up focused in this area towards you like that. What it's doing is it's picking up in the left and right, up and down, every single diagonal, everything. So it is picking up in all directions. And when your mouth comes in from one little bitty side of it, doesn't matter which angle that is, it's basically a small little area of the pickup. So if you get close to it, the reason why proximity effect kind of doesn't really exist, I mean, to a certain degree, it's still, if you get up on it, you will notice a little bit of increased bass, but you're not going to notice a lot. Why is that? Because when you're talking about audible frequencies, looking at the human body, for example, we can put out lows, which is from our chest cavity, the vibrations in our throat through the vocal cords right there vibrate and create fundamental vocal frequencies, and the bass is therefore used from the resonance of our chest cavity, which increases it. The shaping of the mids and highs from our tongue, teeth, lips, our face basically, and then we push those out in certain directions. But the mids and highs are more directional. The lows are more omnidirectional. It takes more power to shove our voices out in all directions, right? And it takes a lot more power to push bass, because bass is going to go more evenly dispersing in an omnipattern microphone. So you're using your power in an omnidirectional pattern way, as opposed to mids, which would be a little bit more narrow, and then the highs would be very narrow. So that's the reason why if you yell to somebody across a football field or something like that, you're basically hearing the highest parts of the voice. You get a little bit closer, you'll hear the mids and highs. You have to get really close to hear the lows, mids, and highs. If someone whispers in your ear like a child, even though they have a little high-pitched voice, you're going to hear a lot of proximity effect, because your ear microphone is basically picking them up point blank to them. You're going to hear maximum detail. You're going to hear a lot of mouth noises, and you're going to be hearing a whole lot of bass in a voice that doesn't have it, simply because they are close to your ear. So basically, there's a little pun for you. Basically, if you're talking about low frequencies, they are going to dissipate the farther away you get. However, when you're talking about an omnipattern microphone picking up a voice whose bass is going in all directions, you put a microphone up there which is picking up bass from all directions. Basically, I'm going to stop. I'm seriously, I'm going to have to stop doing the analogy of the basically. If you're coming in from one area, the mids and highs and stuff like that are going to be there, but the bass is going to come in from all directions too, but it is not going to be enhanced because it is not surrounding the capsule and coming in from all directions. If you were to literally put it in your mouth, you'll hear that proximity effect because your mouth is basically creating an increased low frequencies coming in from the entire pattern of the microphone as opposed to one direction of it. Mids and highs, you can easily imagine those playing just fine coming in from one side because we hear them directionally. Talking into a microphone, it's going to be signal to noise ratio just fine. But increased bass from proximity effect won't really happen a whole lot. It might go up by like 10% if you get really close, because basically if you're looking at 360 degrees all the way around, you're not just talking about 360 degrees this direction, but 360 degrees this direction too. So the entire thing, if you are coming in from, let's just say 5% of that pickup pattern with your mouth right here, that covers 5% of the pickup pattern, you might get 5% more bass just because of the way the microphone picks up omnidirectional pattern sounds and bass, the way bass is picked up in an omnipattern microphone. So now I've kind of set this up for you. Omnidirectional versus cardioid lavaliers. If you were to wear a lavalier on your chest that is cardioid, sure, it's going to be directional. It's going to pick up in a much more vertical way. It's also going to be, because a cardioid pattern microphone looks like a heart, cardioid, is basically going to pick up like this. But what is it up against? Your chest, which is going to take up about approximately half of that pattern, which is going to increase the proximity effect on that, because you're taking over about half the pattern with the chest cavity. Now you may say, what's the big difference if it's picking up so much more bass from a cardioid? Isn't an omnidirectional pattern coming in from half the pattern, half of it also? Yes, but you got to keep in mind that lavaliers are designed to be worn. If you wear it on your chest, you're going to hear a little bit more increased bass, because you're right, it's coming in from one side. But a cardioid does not dissipate in some directions like an omni pattern does. It is focused. And if you're coming in with half of that being bass and the rest of it being directional, sure, it's going to cut out some of the background noise. It's going to be focusing in like crazy, and you're going to have an increased bass response simply because of the nature of the microphone. Versus an Omni, which is going to pick up some increased bass, which is going to sound just fine and natural, because a lavalier microphone is, to be completely honest, a bit thin. Why? Well, because it's a little piece of micro technology that you normally would wear on a person someplace underneath clothing where it's going to be hidden, and people aren't going to really notice it. And if it is designed to be that small to go someplace, it is not that size by design to be, because that's the size that it needs to be in order to be a full quality microphone. I mean, plain and simple. If you were to compare a little lavalier microphone to a full size microphone, the reason that's a full size microphone is because you need to have it being full that size in order to get a full sound out of it. If it's a smaller microphone, then you only need it to be that size to be a full sound. A lavalier microphone is reduced in size because it needs to hide. It's sacrificing some acoustics, some quality. It is the nature of a lav mic. It's going to. But the difference is, if you want to make it a little bit more directional by doing something like putting it inside of something, you're basically essentially putting your ear into whatever that is. So if you were to put it up against a flat surface, like against a car roof, this is our example that we used earlier. If you put it in a car visor next to a cardioid, a cardioid will reach out farther and it will probably extend the bass a little bit more. An Omni will pick up more naturally inside the car, pick up everything around, including the people getting in and out of the car. It's going to be picking up the voice more naturally, and that's just the nature of the way it is. So if you were to use a cardioid pattern as a plant, you're going to have an increased bass response. Another thing to note about this is that if you were to put them both on your chest side by side and expect them to be the same, they're not. And the reason why is because of that pattern, the way it's focused. The same kind of thing could be done if you were to take an Omni pattern microphone and you cup it. You know what cupping is? If you wrap your hand around something like a stick microphone, if you do this and cup around that, basically you're blocking out the sound, the pattern from certain areas, and you're focusing that pattern more towards your mouth. If you cup a lavalier microphone, it is going to basically be artificially and in a non-acoustic friendly engineered way directing the sound forward in a certain direction. And you can create an artificial cardioid pattern by doing that, but it's not going to be anything that's going to be acoustically designed to do so, which is the reason why we have concealers and things which are designed to hold a lavalier microphone, but still allow the pattern to be usable and a good pickup, which is why if you put a plant microphone on something, you have to be very careful about the way that it's going to have sound pull in. If you take your ear and put it up against a wall, you're going to be hearing a low detail of all the sound in the room. Why is that? Well, because all the sounds that hit that wall are bounced into your ear. It's reflective, kind of like a parabolic microphone. A parabolic microphone being like a parabolic dish, where you put a microphone right in the sweet spot where the dish is focused to. That is usually an Omni pattern microphone. That is usually not something like a cardioid. An Omni picks up just fine because it's coming in focused from all directions. You're going to get a little bit of the outside world in addition to what it's being focused in on from the parabolic. If you use something other than an Omni, you're going to get a little bit more directionality. Maybe it's not going to give you a whole lot of increased bass, but you're going to get a little more directionality, and it's not going to sound nearly as natural because an Omni pattern microphone is designed to be natural. But if you put your ears directly against a wall, that's not a reflective surface that's going to be giving you detail. It is something that's designed to reflect all the sound off of the wall from the room into your ear, kind of like a parabolic. This is the same kind of mentality as when we're doing Walla Walla, which is if you have a room full of people and it's, let's just say it's a dinner party and everyone's in the background talking, but when we're doing the dialogue recording, everyone's talking just by their mouths moving. They're not actually saying anything. They're more like that kind of thing. It looks kind of ridiculous if it's just me doing it right now, but background on set, do that. And so they pretend to carry on. It's really bad when they go because they're not saying anything. You have to be thinking something that you want to say when you're doing background. But another thing that we might do if we want it to be natural is we might have the first AD do what's called a Walla pass or a Walla Walla, which is where basically you have to pick up the room the way it would naturally be if everyone were to speak. And the way you do that is not by holding the microphone up and pointing it downwards, because the pattern is going to focus in on certain people. Same thing as if an audience is cheering. You know, you have a crowd in a stadium and they're all cheering. You don't point the microphone right at them. If you do that, you're going to be dialing in on 2 or 3 people. What you need to do is point it, get farther back and point it at them, or even go more off axis to them. That way it's all there, but it's going to be more evenly dispersed. It's going to be more diffused. So with your ear against a wall, it's picking up very diffused also. A lavalier microphone against the chest, even though it's pointed upwards towards your mouth, is going to pick up that detail. It's also going to pick up the rest of the room around you and any activities you might do in front of it. You may say, why do I care about any of that? Well, what if you can't get a boom anywhere close because they're in front of a reflective surface? If you are recording someone in front of a reflective surface, you can't get a boom close to them unless it's been approved for VFX removal, or if there's going to be a change of angle and you can get it then. But it's going to be a more natural sound to not just the voice, but to everything around if you play the lavalier microphone in an Omni kind of pattern microphone. A cardioid has great purpose inside of the world of plants. If you want to put one on a person, then you can. And some people will use it for like background, for like noise rejection if there's going to be a crowd or something like that. But even then, I don't really recommend it because the pickup area of a lav isn't that big. It's going to be better if you use an Omni almost in every single situation, in my opinion. For our second topic, I'm going to probably annoy some people. If you are new to the world of sound and you're trying to get a go, and right now we're at a time where there's not a whole lot of shows going around. The strikes from SAG-AFTRA last year and the Writers Guild are they're over, but the lack of work is continuing forward, at least in the United States. Other countries are feeling it too. But the main reason why is because IATSE is negotiating, and then after them, we have the wild card, which is the Teamsters. Now, if you're watching this well after the industry has discovered, keep in mind, this segment is not evergreen. You can't go back and watch it unless you're like, oh, I remember those days. I mean, then you're going to be looking back at basically the end of May 2024. That's where this topic is going to be on topic. Now, if you're new to sound and you're trying to get hired, by all means, go for it. Try to reach out to sound mixers and see if you can get hired. But I'm going to point something out to the veteran sound mixers that are looking to hire people. I understand hiring new people. You don't have to fight as high to get, you don't have to negotiate as higher rates and stuff like that. I've heard all this stuff. People are more eager to do things your way. I know. The thing about it is, though, there's a lot of veterans that are out of work, very skilled veterans who have been doing this for a long time and have a lot of experience, have a lot of things to offer on set. And you should not turn your back on them, because I do know a lot of good pros that are leaving the industry. And these are people that you may say, well, everyone's replaceable. You're right. We all are. Every single one of us, including you. But veterans have some of the skill sets that we need to pass on to the next generation. People that are on set used to be the most qualified people, or at least people that were that were highly qualified and that made connections with sound mixers. Now, I understand a sound mixer that wants to be loyal to their team. You've had the same boom operator for years or for multiple projects, and you get hired for a job and you say, I'm going to hire this person. It's quite different when you get a couple of weeks on a day play gig and then that show happens to come back and you say, I'm going to stay loyal to my team. That's a little different. They're not officially your team, even though they were joining you for the end of that. This is one of those situations when I would end up saying, you don't really have a team just because they're the last team that worked with you. And it would be recommended and ideal if you were to show some of the love to veterans. I'm not just trying to say, hire me. Hire a veteran. Doesn't matter if it's me or somebody else. Veterans who have been around a long time have seen many strikes. We've seen 2020. This isn't the first strike situation. Last year in 2023 was not the first strike year. Years ago, there was a 100-year strike. There was a 100-day strike. There was a 150-day strike, thanks to because of the writers, and that put the industry down again. And there used to be periods of you not working for a month or two while you were trying to get a show. And then you would end up getting a show and you would be good for a few months and then you wouldn't have a show. There'd be a time off. And there were sound pros that would go to work for a sound mixer and they would work their tail off and then stay loyal to them and the mixer would stay loyal back, and that's great. In the modern era where it's a highly competitive area where you're trying to get a hold of people, I would just say don't turn your back on the veterans. Make sure you hire the veterans. Here is one thing that I will tell you has frustrated me, more so than mixers hiring new people. Well, let me tell you the reason why that's been annoying to me. I have had, during the past year, mixers reach out to me because they have either hired someone less experienced or someone who has not fully taken the role of boom operator or sound utility to heart in what the job is. It used to be that when you just had a boom and a microphone, you dealt with acoustics. You really dialed that thing in. You were on a cable. You made sure that every little bitty thing we didn't have as many products as we have now. So you had to figure out a way to make a shock mount work exactly the way you want it to. Those were true artists that were able to make a microphone better than it deserved to be, and could place it exactly where and when with that technique. In the modern era of filmmaking, things have gone more digital. We now use multiple cameras. We now have micro transmitter packs that are digital, low or no noise. You have all these different elements of tech. And part of being a boom operator is being able to troubleshoot. Back in the day, if you ran a cable up to your boom pole and something went out in the middle of a take, you'd say, oh, what happened? Depending on the sound, you may say, did my boom get unplugged? Was it cut? Was it, you'd have to be able to diagnose it. You'd say, wait a minute, there's a buzz in the line. I got to trace the line and figure out where the buzz is coming from. And then you come and find out that the electrician threw a header on top of your boom cable. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, that's why. We would need to do something like put down a pancake, separating the two layers. So that way the header and the boom microphone or the boom cable were separated by a piece of wood that would stop the electrons from going through there. And we would have to do that, cross them over. There were things like that. Now in the world of digital, guess what? In the same way you used to troubleshoot cables, and the way you would troubleshoot your boom in the old school era, you need to know how to do that in the digital realm too. So many of the modern area boom operators, and not just old school guys still know how to do this stuff. They're learning. They're learning the tech. They're learning how to do things because they want to be able to troubleshoot, because that's something that we always needed to do, is be able to troubleshoot our gear. It doesn't matter if it's a cable like it used to be, or if tech has gotten to the point where we need to understand the tech. You have to understand the tech. You have to understand what is the difference between a hit if it's coming through on your boom wireless and a hit that comes through on your IFB. You need to be able to know the difference and hear that difference. You need to be able to determine if someone is, if your wireless is working fine and then suddenly it starts glitching. What is the nature of the glitch? Is it because someone is transmitting on the same exact frequency? Is it because you're too close to something that is creating an interference? Is it because you didn't set something properly? Is it because, there could be a whole bunch of different reasons. My point here is you need to be able to troubleshoot. If you're like, well, I'm not a technician. Well, guess what? Maybe you don't need to be calling yourself a full-fledged boom operator if you don't know how to do basic troubleshooting of your boom. I'm sorry, that's the God's honest truth of it. There have been quite a few mixers the past year or year and a half now almost since these strikes have happened that have gotten anything from a TV pilot to a TV series to a movie that have called me up and said, Alan, could you help me with something? Then I go out there or I talk to them and get whatever it is and then fix it for them. And usually they'll say, I'll pay you such and such amount of money for that fix, or to do this for me. Well, those days are done. I'm not volunteering that service anymore. Why? Because they want to call in an expert to fix their situation. After 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 days, depending on the situation, it could be their teams just are not doing their homework and don't know what they're doing. It's more to just running the set. Yes, booming is a very small part of what we do. It is a big part of the acquisition of sound on a set. Without a boom in your hands, you're not going to be able to acquire that sound. So yes, it is a small part of what we do as a boom operator, but as far as the tracks are concerned, it is a big part of it. Just like getting the noise floor quiet, getting on access to a microphone, but making sure there's no digital noise in the background, that is critical. People who are just concentrating on their skill sets and stuff like that, saying, I'll let somebody else deal with that. The sound utility, I'll call them in, or the sound mixer will know, something like that. You're starting to annoy me because you need to understand your full job, which is being able to troubleshoot your own gear. And when people like me are called out to fix your issues because you don't know how to do it yourself, I've gone to day play for mixers who have said, oh, don't use that microphone. Why not? Because it has a click in it. And then I've looked at it and someone cross-threaded the capsule onto the microphone preamp. This is a professional? Okay, what about, oh, don't use that shock mount. Why is that? Well, because there's a weird noise in that. It's a tapping noise. I put it in there, shake it up next to my ear. I realize the tapping noise is because the cable isn't routed properly around the thing and it's moving. So when you cue the microphone back and forth or you shake it gently, it's because the cable is touching the side of the microphone. And that's momentum, tapping the microphone. And all you have to do is just reroute the cable or push it over a little bit to the side. Again, you call yourself a professional? Simple troubleshooting. If you want to be considered someone who just goes out there and holds a boom, just manages the set, that's fine. But from my perspective, if I have not only the ability to run a set and hold a boom just like you do, but I also have the technical background, the background that mixers are relying on to save the day for them, I'll call Alan. He'll come in and fix this for me. I'll call Alan. He'll make this for me. I'm not going out there on call anymore. Plain and simple, I'm tired of being used. Sure, they may be paying me money. You know the phrase, teach a man to fish, you feed him for life, but you give a man a fish and you feed him for a day? Same kind of thing. If you want me and my skill sets, you better hire me. Because I'm not going to be a fish that you can, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be the person you give a fish to. I'm going to be the person that you teach to fish, in this analogy. In the sense that if you want me and my expertise and my skill sets, you're going to hire me. As opposed to hiring someone else who doesn't have that skill set. Now, I understand the counter argument. You may say, I just want a boom operator that can boom. As long as someone on my team is able to do this or whatever else, that's fine. You can do it however you want to. On your team, you're the sound mixer. But then being someone who is on call, there's a sound mixer in town that has never once hired me, but he loves texting me constantly. Well, maybe not constantly. It's sometimes constant, and then he stops for a while. Then he'll text me again, and then he stops. But it's always when he wants something. He wants to ask me questions. What about this? How do you do this? And is there a way to do this with this particular tech? And then one of the most recent things he's done is, why don't you review this? Wanting me to review a sound product. Something that I am not interested in. If I'm not interested in it, I'm not going to review your product. I'm extremely selective about the things I do. And when I say I have no interest, and then I'm being pushed, guess what? I have no loyalty to you. I can guarantee he doesn't watch any of my videos. He just wants to have me on call where he can he can text me and ask me a question. Or, I want you to do this because maybe his boom operator wants to know the answer to something. If you want to know the answer to something, reach out to me yourself. Don't let your sound mixer do it. But I'll tell you this also. I'm not going to go out of my way to save the day for people anymore. I'm not going to bother to fix something for you so that you can have a good show because you decided to, for whatever reason, hire someone that doesn't have the skill set you're looking for, including the ability to troubleshoot and tech things. Boom operating is not just an art, is not just a skill set where it requires management skills and customer service skills and that kind of stuff. Same thing we've talked about in the 3BO series. It is something that is absolutely mandatory for you to have at least enough technical knowledge for you to be able to troubleshoot your own gear, the gear that you use to make your track sound good. Because when you send something to a sound mixer and all of a sudden there's issues and they say, oh, we got to refreak you, or they understand certain things and they'll maybe be able to troubleshoot it, but you need to be able to understand enough to troubleshoot your own gear or the gear that they give you. If you don't know how to do it, ask. But I'll tell you this, until I'm hired again on set, I am not going to be an on-call person that is going to answer text messages from people that say, hey, Alan, how do you do this? I'll say, read the manual, RTM or RTFM. Because there are a lot of sound mixers out there that I've talked to and have hired me in the past, and they love what I bring to the team. But for whatever reason, choose not to hire me and then have all kinds of technical issues and then say, can you come out and help me? Can you tell me what we're doing wrong? None of my team are able to diagnose this. Can you tell me what it is? And I give them a one sentence answer. Yeah, this is what your issue is. Well, we don't know how to do that. Can you do it? No, not anymore. I can't. I'm sorry. You may say, but Alan, if you're not going to be valuable to those mixers, they're not going to use you anymore. Fine. That's fine. Another mixer will. Only when they completely go crazy or start losing work because their teams don't know something will they finally just start hiring technicians that are technicians that understand the job. And only when boom operators start to be replaced by people that do know how to troubleshoot and do know how to do the job fully and entirely are people going to get it. So if you're new, just got out of full scale, just got out of SCAD, something like that, and they taught you how to use the gear, you're the reason why a lot of sound mixers will hire you to be a second sound mixer, or you're doing a lot of ENG stuff right now. Fine, more power to you. You go for it. There are some people I know that graduated those schools, and then they were the right-hand man or woman to a sound mixer that was in need of that skill set when they would transition to digital or when they got a new system, and they were quite valuable and therefore hired as utility. Great, more power to you. You have a skill set. It's one of those things where the sound mixer has the skill set needed to do the sound, but the sound utility had the technical knowledge, and between the two of them, they're going to be able to work well together. But if you are trying to be a sound utility, I strongly recommend you getting a versatile, well-rounded background. But usually if you're going to weasel your way onto a team, when there are qualified veterans there, it's because you have technical skills that the sound mixer needs. And the sound mixer is more than happy to hire you for that technical knowledge because they can help you with the skill set of sound. They're going to say, oh, no, you need a little help with this wiring method. I'll show you how to wire. But why isn't that extending to boom operators? Sound mixers, if you're watching this, You need to really think about your teams. You need to think about well-rounded. You need to push your boom operators and your sound utilities to get a well-rounded skill set. That means fully knowing how to troubleshoot the gear. That means understanding that, that there is inside of electrosonics. For example, if you can't dweedle tone a certain frequency, you say, why is that? Well, it's because it's an emergency frequency band, maybe. The app won't tell you that you're trying to dweedle into an emergency band, but you just happen to know that there are certain areas of certain blocks that are designed to be emergency frequency only, and you're not allowed to dweedle it. You can manually select those frequencies, sure, by going up or down on your transmitter, but then don't be surprised when it mutes the output and you have nothing there because it's in an emergency channel. But if you don't understand that and don't know that, and that's just one thing, then maybe you need to do a little bit of research. Maybe need to learn a little bit about the gear that you're using. Not just, this is how you turn it on. Awesome. This is how you turn on phantom power. This is how you turn the power up or down. The world is going more and more technical. And you need to also. So, first episode of the Sound Speeds podcast is part of the Geeks Rising Network, and I probably annoyed some people and irritated others. But you know what? I don't care. There's the Generation X attitude for you. I don't care. If you don't like the information I bring you on this channel, I don't want to sound rude or anything like that, but guess what? You're not going to stay around anyway, so I can tell you to leave. In the words of Curtis Judd, you're dismissed. I mean, it's one of those things where, to me, people on this channel come here for the information. You can disagree with me all you want to. That's fine. That's fine. You don't have to take everything I say as gospel. By no means am I a perfect being. By no means do I have all the answers. But you come to this channel and you watch. Sure, there's a lot of information here that you won't get anywhere else, including that. That's a reality check type thing, that maybe if you're a sound mixer and you're listening to things, or maybe you're just a boom operator trying to work on your skills. Also, guess what? You can learn, you can read some manuals. You can learn some stuff. We all can. I'm always learning. Even though I have not been on set in over a year now. And last year, I worked 17 days on set. I'm still doing a lot in the world of sound. I still am doing sound speeds weekly. I'm still doing education. I still teach classes in the real world. Just last week, I taught two classes 5 days ago, actually. 5 days ago, I taught one from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. And then I taught another one from 6 until 9 in the real world. It's because it's what I do. I teach. And I still do consulting on the side. So if you want to hire me as a consultant, I can do that too. I mean, there's a lot of things I got going on. Still very much involved in the world of sound. As you know, that I just got through, helping Ambient, create the Slim and the Slim series. I have a few other things that I have in the works too, helping to develop. But you can almost say that, yeah, sure, I'm being a little bitter now. But the fact of the matter is, I do miss being on set. Yeah. Is there bitterness? Only when I see people get hired who don't know how to fully do the job. I'm starting to get back on the previous topic. Let me just go ahead and stop right there. I'm going to go ahead and stop right there and say thank you for watching this episode of the Sound Speeds podcast. And be sure to tune in the future for more things that will probably feel like I am ranting at you or talking your ear off or telling you off, whatever. Gen X attitude. And as always, I will bring you sound advice. Have a question you'd like answered or want to add something? Be sure to write it in the comment section down below. You can also make a suggestion for future topics of discussion. Again, comment section down below, or you can email me at soundspeeds@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on future sound advice.